What's up, folks? I wanted to take a quick moment to revisit kind of how you handle it if the meta shifts, right? So like what we just had recently with the latest changes from AMG, which is actually going to impact Worlds and directly impacts the build that I was actually practicing, and then some of the major builds that I'm practicing against. And tonight I wanted to talk real quick just about the Han, because that's the one key piece of my list that changed. And just to kind of recap real quick, his loadout went from 20 down to 15. So he lost 5. So you can no longer take both the Biston Gunner and the Perceptive Copilot to give you the guaranteed double modded 2 shots, which again makes him vulnerable to jam, which I actually really appreciate, and then just makes him less consistent. But the other pieces I really like about it are it actually opens up a whole opportunity to try out different builds. And I've got 2 in front of me here I'll talk about in a second. And then also it encourages you to play differently, right? So with the previous build, you would always, always, always focus no matter what. With the changes, now you have some moment to think and be like, wait a minute, maybe I can try something else, right? So you can do some more actions, different builds, you can really play around with it. Unfortunately, we're still at the point where Biston is such a good upgrade, especially since Han has the built-in rerolls, that you still probably want to keep Biston on there. Um, that's one of the things that just makes him so good. And he's the only piece where Biston is really so powerful because you have that free reroll you can use on both attacks. So even if you just focus, you still have the option to do the reroll. Another thing I brought up in my big points breakdown is that in previously you would have sort of a question like, do I spend a focus now or do I mulligan this if you get like blank eyeball hit, right? And now if you only have a single focus token, I would be inclined to just reroll the whole thing every time. But I've got 2 builds here. The first one on the left is the one that I actually thought about putting together after the changes. I believe I have a different one too, but I wanted to talk about the closest equivalent. So we lost Perceptive Copilot by a single point. If we still had 16, we could still have done Perceptive Copilot. So the alternative one that you could do is Baze. Baze is also in the crew slot. He's cheaper, so you can still fit him in here, and you still get some additional upgrade slots as well. You've got, while you perform a focus action, you may treat it as red if you do gain 1 additional focus token for each enemy ship at range 0 to 1, up to a maximum of 2. So this still gives you the multiple focus tokens and can give you up to 2. Okay, so it's weirdly worded. It should be like gain 1 additional focus token. Oh no, okay, so you can actually get 3 focus tokens. All right, so it is slightly higher benefit than Perceptive Copilot, but dramatically higher risk. It's a red action if you treat it as red, so it is optional too, which is nice. So you can treat it as red to get the multiple focuses, which is a little bit funny too, because I would have to look up how that interacts with the red bump focus. I feel like if you get the bump focus, you can like, it is red already, I'll just treat it as red. But yeah, so that's there. But that's a way you can get the multiple focus tokens and still have the focus reroll on your attacks. But it rewards a dramatically more aggressive playstyle than the previous one, where you could kind of kite before, which I do actually really like. So I like that they left this option open where you can still take Baze and Biston, but if you want to do that, you put yourself in extreme danger to get the extra focus tokens. Or you just save your focus token and then don't spend it. Or I talked about before, I also wanted to put a couple other pilots in there who can pass off focus tokens. So like Jake Farrell could easily keep up with Han and pass him focus tokens. Or there's an X-Wing pilot that lets you do it. There are several pilots in Rebels that just let you sort of throw focus tokens around. So it's not the hardest thing in the world. And then you've got classic coordinate, of course. So there's still a lot of ways to give the double focus. It just requires more pieces and a little bit more coordination now than it did. So again, I really, really appreciate the way this change was made, where nothing was banned, loadout was reduced, but it's still high. So the exact power combo was taken down, but in a way that the door is still open to still do what you did, but in a way that's more creative. So the Baze Biston combo still allows the title, of course, and then you end up with 2 extra points. 2? Yes. It's 8 and 5 is 13, yeah. So I put Chopper Crew on here, which lets you do an action even while stressed, which is really good, especially in combination with Baze, because you're going to be stressed more often. Helps you kind of support those bump focuses if you have to do anything else. And then you've got Hopeful on here just for fun. This is just what I put together. And then the alternative one, I believe this was Chris B on the Yet Another X-Wing podcast last week, Yaxby. I believe this is the build that he kind of threw out there, where he's using Ursa Wren as the other crew. And she reads, you can maintain up to 2 locks. Each lock must be on a different object. After a friendly ship at range 0 to 3 is locked by an enemy ship, you may perform a target lock action, which is really great. It's this giant bubble, right? Where if anyone gets a target lock, you get a target lock, which is super effective. And then you can also have the double locks. So there's a really good chance you're going to recharge this, even if it's not every single turn. um, you still have this chance to have these locks sort of floating around, right? So even if you don't get a lock every single turn, say you, even if you're getting in one and using one each turn, that's a wash. But you could be getting two each turn and using one, or you could be getting two and using two. It's crazy. So it's really good. I would hesitate, or I would make sure to emphasize this doesn't read the same as R3 Astromech, which just lets you acquire two locks at once. You would have to trigger the ability twice per turn to get both locks, but you can do it twice per turn, which makes her a lot better. Otherwise, you could get like that could be cheesed out a bit. That does mean you need to be careful with range control to make sure you're able to target lock the things you want to. But then at the same time, this is after movement, so yeah, so it's during engagement. This is during activation. This would mostly happen before engagement. So you'd still be getting the target locks before the following attack phase. Yeah, so that's really really good. That's great tech, and we're probably going to see it a lot. And then the scenario I mentioned where you roll eyeball, hit eyeball blank, you could spend the lock because you're going to get free locks all over the place just to reroll the one result and then spend the focus, and suddenly you have three hits instead of mulliganing and then kind of see how you get on the next one. You still don't want to do that because then that would keep you. That would use your focus token. So unless if that was your first shot, you still wouldn't want to do that. But on your second, you might. You might just use the lock to reroll the focus and the blank, and then just to risk it. So gives you more options rather than mulliganing the whole thing. You could keep the hit. So I really like that. That's great tech. And getting free target locks gives you much better mods than just having Han's all or nothing reroll. Another piece that was brought up was the child. You can do just Bistan and the child. One other thing I really like about Ursa is she still allows you that 1 point for Chopper. Chopper is super good on Han, really, really good on a Falcon. But then so you could do the child, which gives you the recharging force. And there was some conversation that that's a big gamble, but I mean, if you're Han, you're taking shots anyway, probably bleeding some damage. So you should be recharging those force points. And truth be told, you're going to be taking a lot of target locks anyway. That requires you to play really, really cagey Han. But at the same time, every time they take advantage of the free target lock on Han, they're not locking something else in your list. So it's actually kind of a defensive tech that could be good too. So that is, and just to make sure I'm talking about that, that's this one. Because the child being 1 point cheaper than Perceptive Copilot still works, but that is all you get. You get Bistan and the child, and that's it. It does give you the option to convert 2 eyeballs and fairly consistently, which is really good without spending your focus. So I do really like that. And a 7 point crew for 2 force is really, really great. And say they ignore you, so what? That's nice too. Then they're deliberately not shooting at Han to avoid recharging your force, which is also a defensive tech for Han. So either way, it's really strong defensive tech for you. And he still does the things. So that was it. I don't want to keep I don't want this to be too long. I am still list building my Rebel list with a Han in it. I will play it. I honestly don't love flying the ship. I know it's a really strong piece, so I'm trying to make a point of getting as much value out of it as I can. But it's not really my playstyle. I don't really like that big lumbering piece you have to be super, super, super careful with. But I am loving the A-Wings and want to try B-Wings. So especially looking at some of the Battle over Endor stuff, pardon. I probably will be looking at changing Han out and see what else I can do there. But 7 points is a little bit hard to work around. You get a 4 point and a 3 point. Unless you downgrade something else in your list, you get 2 4 points. And 2 4-pointers contributing the same value as a double tapping Han is a tall order. And a 4 and a 3 is even harder. So I want to do it, especially for the objective control, the flexibility, the more fun of flying. But at the same time, I do understand that Han is still a really powerful piece, and I want to kind of keep him in there. So that's kind of the decision I'm wrestling with right now. But yeah, we'll see. Let me know what you're flying with Han. See if you've had any practice with them and been really enjoying it. Curious to hear people's thoughts on this one.